The Duke Blue Devils enter 2023 coming off of a very surprising 2022 campaign. Mike Elko and company did a phenomenal job here last season, elevating this team to contend in the ACC, and they could be elevated even more with a lot of pieces coming back on offense and defense that is expected to take more jumps forward. Could this be a year where the Duke Blue Devils surprise everybody again in the ACC, or is Duke going to regress after their surprising campaign last season? What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate, and welcome to my channel. I'm predicting all 133 FBS level college football teams this summer. Guys, that means I am doing your favorite teams. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. But hey, there are more ways than that you can help me support my channel. You're doing one right now by watching the video, and you can do more by liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, really anything else, guys. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, at least as of recording this video. We are so close. So please, if you could help me out, let's get to 1,000 really as soon as possible. But whatever you guys are able to do, I appreciate it. Apologies if you hear firework or noises in the background. I'm recording this on the eve of July 4th. Happy Independence Day, or I guess by this time this video goes up, happy belated Independence Day. We're talking about the Duke Blue Devils in 2023. How do preview predictions work around here? We go through a roster overview, take a look at who the team lost, who's coming back, and who's coming in through the transfer portal and recruiting class, as well as taking a look at the Duke football schedule and giving it a game-by-game preview and prediction for the Blue Devils. So let's talk about Blue Devil football here in 2023, starting out with the roster preview. Of course, starting with the most important position on the field, the quarterback position. And Duke fans, feel free to correct me in the comment section below. I could not find a whole lot of notable losses for this Duke offense really at all, especially in the quarterback and skill position groupings. You pretty much return everyone of note, at least in my mind, to this team, if not more than what's on the board. At the quarterback position, though, you do return Riley Leonard, who was really, really good for this Duke team last season. 2,967 yards, put up 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions on almost 64% completion percentage. He should be a firecracker, no pun intended, given it is around the time of July the 4th here in the US of A, Independence Day. But he should be a very good quarterback for Duke again in 2023, and is going to make life really hard for opposing defenses. And he's got a lot of returning talent around him, starting out with the running back position. Now, Riley Leonard was the leading rusher for Duke last year, 699 yards and 13 rushing touchdowns. Also led the team in carries, 124, one more than the returning rusher out of the running back room in Jordan Waters. 566 yards, 8 touchdowns, led the way among running backs, but Jacques Moore was not far behind with 508 yards and 5 touchdowns. Oh, and then Jalen Coleman back there as well with 480 yards and 4 touchdowns from last season. That's a really good group of running backs for Riley Leonard and this offense. And then the wide receiver group, well, he's got a lot more talent returning here as well. Jalen Calhoun, 873 yards, 4 touchdowns last season. And then Jordan Moore, 656 yards and 5 touchdowns, each of them 60 or more catches last season, as well as Samir Haggins, who comes back, third leading receiver, 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, and Eli Pancol, among other names that I did not mention, but those were the guys above or around 350 yards. Pancol just 3 yards short from last season, but a lot of returning talent in that wide receiver room for Riley Leonard on the Duke offense that exploded last year and could be even better this season. Not to mention their tight end room. You do return Nick Dalmelin and Cole Finney as well. Dalmelin, 170 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. Finney played a backup role, probably will do so again in 2023. Offensive line, here's where the losses start to take place. You lose Andre Harris and a backup center that I did not put on the board. You do return it all ACC tackle in Graham Barton. Jacob Monk and Maurice McIntyre come back, as well as getting a transfer, and Jacob Hornibrook, who is coming over by way of Stanford. It's a 3-star rated transfer, according to 24/7 Sports. This is a really, really good offense. I think it's going to be even more potent in 2023. Pretty good offensive line there as well. Mike Elko's offense should be flying for the Blue Devils. However, defense has still got some question marks, but when we take a look at this defensive line, it should be stacked this season, as you get a lot of returners. Dwayne Carter, Jamian Franklin, Vincent Anthony, Michael Reese, RJ Oben, Anais Peebles, Ryan Smith. There are so many other returners to this defensive front, it is absolutely insane. Dwayne Carter last year was tied for the team lead with 5.5 sacks. Oben had 4 sacks. Franklin had 3. There's just a lot of sack production coming back to this defensive front, and it's going to be a really good piece of this Duke defense. Now, there are a lot of questions about this linebacking and defensive back front. In the linebacking room, you do lose. Shaka Hayward was your second leading tackler last year, 93 tackles, 2 sacks. There were a lot of people on the Duke defense last year with 2 interceptions. Hayward was one of them. You lose a key part to that defense from last year. However, should be a solid group of linebackers coming back. Cam Dillon was your 4th leading tackler. Dorian Mousy, Trey Freeman, and Nick Morris. Apologies for any mispronunciations to highlight the linebacking room. And then when you take a look at the defensive back room, well, you probably lose your best defensive player from last year, and that's Darius Joyner. 96 tackles led the team, 4 sacks, 5 pass defended, 2 interceptions, tied with, again, the many players that had 2 interceptions for this team last year. He's going to be gone, as well as Detrone Young, another pretty good part to this secondary last season, tied for the team lead with, again, many other players with 7 passes defended, had an interception, 45 tackles, was a top 10 tackler for this team last season. You do return Jalen Stinson, Brandon Johnson, and Chandler Rivers, some pretty good pieces in the secondary, as well as some transfers. Miles Jones, comes over from Texas A&M, and Al Blades comes over from Miami, both of them 3-star rated transfers, although Blades a former high-rated 4-star coming out of high school. If that defensive back 7 can get better, I think that defensive line is going to be pretty solid. That offense is going to be potent, and the Blue Devils could be a sleeper team in the ACC this year. Your head coach is Mike Elko, offensive coordinator Kevin Johns, defensive coordinator Tyler Santucci. Apologies for any mispronunciations. As we take a look at the Blue Devil football schedule for 2023, hey, any game at home is going to be underlined, and any game on the road will be in italics or the slanted text. Any game you see highlighted in green is a game that I think Duke will win fairly easily. Yellow will be a challenging game for the Blue Devils, or maybe a very close back and forth game, but it's one I see Duke pulling out. And red, of course, is a loss. So without further ado, let's predict the Blue Devils' schedule here in 2023. And you start out with a very, very interesting game. You got nothing else going on Labor Day. I know you don't. You better be tuning into this game here. You might be thinking, oh, it's against Clemson. Clemson's going to blow Duke out by like 3 or 4 touchdowns. As far as my knowledge goes, Clemson's only favored by around 2 touchdowns in this game. Duke has got home field advantage. It is not a neutral site game. And this Duke offense, I think, is potent enough to be able to pull the upset here against Clemson. However, I think with how good that Clemson defense is going to be, and I also expect that offense is going to improve. Garrett Riley coming in as the new offensive coordinator with Cade Klubnik and a lot of good weapons there on the offensive end. But I think defense is what's going to win Clemson this game. Now, this one, I think is going to be very, very close for comfort here. I think Clemson is going to be a team that gets flustered. Duke's going to be a team that I think is going to come out surprise Clemson a little bit here. Clemson, though, on the defensive end, I think will be able to get that win. And the Tigers will hand Duke their first loss of the young season. However, I believe you got some pretty easy wins coming up here. Lafayette is a team in the FCS ranks that I think Duke will be able to win. And then Northwestern is a game I think they'll be able to win as well. I do not think the Wildcats are going to be any good. However, do not sleep on Pat Fitzgerald. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people make around the college football world. Who knows? I could be making that mistake this year as well. I just don't think the Wildcats are going to be up to the standard of the Blue Devils this season. And then on the road against UConn, a very, very interesting game. A game that I almost did highlight in yellow there, but it is a game that I do think the Blue Devils are going to be able to win. UConn, a much improved team from seasons past. Last season, they really showed that. I think they'll continue that this season. However, when you take a look at the Huskies, I do not believe they will be much of a challenge for the Duke Blue Devils. Would be a compelling basketball game, but this is football we are talking about. Still, I think could be a compelling game, but Duke will walk away with that win. And then you got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish coming into your house, and this is the game that, again, would not be surprised if Duke were to pull off this upset here, be able to beat the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. However, you got Sam Hartman coming in, a big play quarterback with a lot of weapons offensively, in the defense that has some question marks and has been scrutinized this spring and summer. However, I feel like that defense is going to take a step forward this season. And much like that Clemson game, I think big plays on offense and good, solid defense is what's going to help Notre Dame walk into Durham and help them win that game. Now, again, would not surprise me to see Duke win that game. I think it is going to be very competitive and very close, but Notre Dame just a little too much for the Blue Devils. They end up pulling that one out. Then you get your bye week here after a couple tough games to start out the year. You got to go stay at home in Durham and play the North Carolina State Wolfpack, who I think are going to be a tough team to play this year. You lose Devin Leary, but you bring in Brennan Armstrong. There are a lot of weapons leaving that offense, especially in the wide receiver room. And defensively, there are some good players leaving as well. But Dave Doeren, at head coach, knows how to reload, how to get his troops ready. I think it's going to be a very tough challenge for Duke. I think defensively, we know the kind of brand of football that NC State plays on that side of the ball, but I think Duke's offense going to be a little too explosive for this NC State defense to handle. Too many big plays from the Blue Devils. I think will walk them to a Week 7 win over the Wolfpack. However, things start to get tough here. You got to go on the road and play Florida State, and I love what the Seminoles have this year with Jordan Travis. They got a lot of great size in that wide receiver room. That secondary really got a big boost with Fentrell Cypress coming in there among all the returning talent they have coming back there as well. I think offensively they're sound, defensively they're sound. I think that's a very good football team. I think Duke is going to have a rough time going on the road and beating the Florida State Seminoles. And I also think they're going to have a tough time going on the road and beating the Louisville Cardinals as well. Louisville is a team that, hey, look, you do lose Malik Cunningham, a dynamic player at the quarterback position, but Jack Plummer comes in as well as a new head coach, Jeff Brom. There's a lot of overhaul on that roster. I think Brom brought in like 25 or 30 transfers somewhere along that number. There's a lot of roster overhaul, but the schedule sets up very nice for Louisville. I think going on the road for Duke, coming off what probably might be a very disappointing and discouraging performance against Florida State, I think they'll end up losing another one here to the Louisville Cardinals, and they will end up falling to, what is that now, 500, 4-4 on the season. But I think things will start to pick up for Duke. I think they're going to go back to Durham and get a much-needed win against the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Again, with Sam Hartman moving on to Notre Dame, another team that Duke has to play. Look at my prediction for that game. But with him leaving, A.T. Perry leaving, that's a lot of explosiveness on offense gone. Defensively, there are still some guys that there are some guys that are leaving. There's some questions to be answered for Wake Forest defensively as well. I think there's too many questions for Wake Forest. There's too much returning talent for Duke. Blue Devils will stay in Durham, win that one. But going on the road against North Carolina, hey, you got the in-state rivalry here. We all know the basketball classic, bringing it to the gridiron here. This is going to be a very, very competitive game, I feel. That North Carolina defense was atrocious last season, and it's got to get a lot better to be able to stop this Duke offense. However, even if North Carolina's defense does not get a whole lot better, which I have faith that it will get somewhat better from last season, that's an offense led by a Heisman caliber quarterback in Drake May. Even though they lose their top two receivers, there's a lot of talent around him, much like with what Duke has here. I expect this to be an offensive shootout type game, but I think North Carolina's got the better offense. I think they got the more explosive offense. I think they have the better quarterback, which I do think makes a difference here. Duke has got a lot more of a pass rush, but I think North Carolina makes too many big plays to help them win that game. I think Virginia is going to be atrocious this year. That program loses a lot of talent through the portal, and otherwise, it's going to be a very emotional season for them. Do not be surprised if Virginia is very competitive and shocks some people this year, but not projected to be a very good football team. And then I think Duke beats Pitt last game of the regular season there. Keaton Slovis is out, Phil Jurkovec is in, and a lot of changing pieces around him, but a lot of key contributors gone on defense that could have helped them against this Duke offense, especially on the pass rushing front. So Duke is going to be able to win that game there. I think this is a pretty clear, cut and dry schedule. I think it's very easy to see where the wins come from and where the losses come from. I feel very confident about Duke going 7-5. Now, again, do not be surprised if they pull off an upset this year. Clemson, Notre Dame, Louisville, North Carolina, Florida State. I do think all of those in their own ways are winnable games, but I think Duke will be going 7-5 this season. Let me know what you guys think about the Blue Devils in the comments section below. And as always, remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.